This chapter is about disk management. With disk management you can do a lot of different things. For example, you can create a partition, you can delete a partition, you can shrink a partition, you can change the drive letter of a partition or assign a drive letter or unassign a drive letter. You can format a partition. So let's have a look how we do that. Well, if you're well organized, you have a shortcut of disk management either in your dock like here, or you have it in your task toolbars. And here my toolbars, I have my websites, my programs, and I have my system programs, and amongst those I have disk management. If you're not that well organized yet, you press start and you type in disk management. Disk manage, and it should already be there, and it is up here, and you can start it from here. If you click on it, you get disk management. If you don't like typing, you can get it in another way, which is my preferred way. If I don't have a shortcut, you go to computer, you right click on computer, and you go to manage, and I said right click, and here's disk management. There are some other interesting functions of the system here, but we will go to disk management and we will enlarge that. Now here I have my different volumes, which means my different disks, disk 0, disk 1, disk 2, and there could be more. You have to look down here whether there's any more. Well, there's a CD-ROM here, but that's not really a disk in the true sense. So let's first make a little room, because all those disks are full. Now if you had unallocated space on one of those disks, you could of course create a partition on it, for example, but we don't have any unallocated space, so we first have to shrink a partition in order to get some unallocated space. Before you manipulate any partition, I suggest that you back it up. I just backed up my data partition half an hour ago, so we can go with that. If anything happens to that partition, I can easily reconstruct it. So you right click on that partition and you say shrink volume, and now it looks how much you can shrink it, and it tells you there is 49,000 megabytes. This is all in megabytes. See, it's all in megabytes. 49,000 megabytes, so that would be 49 gigabytes available. Although there is, if you look at that partition, it's partition E, in reality there are 69 gigabytes available, but there is something at the high end of the partition that prevents it from shrinking any further. If you wanted to shrink it any further, you have to use an external tool. But for our purposes, this is plenty of space, because we only want to have a small partition, a tiny little partition of 2000 megabytes, which is actually 2 gigabytes. So you say shrink, and it's shrinking, and here we have, it always comes out with a little less. We have unallocated space of approximately 2 gigabytes. Now if we right click on that unallocated space, we can make a new simple volume, so a new partition, and a wizard comes up and you say next, and it tells you you have 2000 megabytes available. You could use less, but you can't of course use more because there isn't more. And then you go to next, and it assigns a drive letter, the next available drive letter, it doesn't matter, and you say next, and here it is formatting, and you always want to have this check, perform a quick format, because a full format would take a long time. And usually you always in Windows 7 you want to go with NTFS, but there are other options. You could go, for example, with FAT32, and for the demonstration purposes I'll go with FAT32 and show you later how we reformat that. And we say next, and then we say finish, and it made a new volume F, and immediately down here this volume F comes up and says there's a new volume, doesn't have a name yet. I'll show you later how to give it a name. You could, well, let me show you right now. You go go to computer, and where's our new volume? Here's our new volume. You left click on it and right click on it and rename it, and let's name it test, and it wants your authorization to do that, and now our new volume is there with the name test. So let's go back to this management. See, now it's called test, and we have a little volume here. Okay, as I said, we formatted it in FAT32, but that's not really what you want. So if you want to reformat it, you right click again on it, and here you say format, and then you can choose NTFS, and we reformat it. And again we do a quick format, and we reformat it to NTFS, and now it's in NTFS. Okay, if you wanted to change the drive letter, you can do that too. If you don't like the drive letter, so change drive letter. And you have various options here. You can put in another letter, or you can remove the drive letter, that this partition has no drive letter. That is possible too. But we'll just keep it, it's okay. So we have shrunk the partition. Here our data partition. We have created a new partition. We have formatted it, and actually we have reformatted it later. And we have looked at how you do a drive letter. And since this was only for demonstration purposes, we actually delete this partition again. Now we say here delete the volume, and it tells you that if you have data on it, you should back this up first. And you have free space. Now free space doesn't mean that you can use it to extend this partition, for example, because there is still a partition which you have to delete. So you have to right click on it again, and you have to delete this partition, and now you have unallocated space. You only can do something with unallocated space, because free space means free space within a partition. Okay, and now we want to give it back to the partition where it came from, and that is by extending the volume. So you extend the volume, and the wizard comes up again, and it tells you that you have 2000 megabytes, 2 gigabytes to extend. Well, we know that, and we say finish, and see, now this whole space is back to this partition. So we have done the whole cycle. We shrunk the space, we made a partition, we played around with the drive letter and the formatting, and we deleted the partition and put it back to where it belongs. That's about all that I wanted to demonstrate here.